these issues with the thousands of properties that we've been able to build on. When you ask me if there are remaining gaps, I guess I'm a little constrained to say we don't know what they can do. In terms of what I can say our track record has been is where we've encountered problems with liens or title defects or any of the other issues on a piece of property, we've been able to work our way through those for the most part. Will we get all the way through these last 200 without finding issues that we can't work our way around to resolve? That I can't tell you at this point. But right now, I can say the track record's been pretty good, and we continue to work away on these properties, and we have every intention of working through these remaining 200.
These are residential and commercial.
Yes.
What does it mean if we stop building new facilities?
Oh,
Great.
if there's a company that because they have a flood damage facility, they'd like to relocate to a new facility, it's going to take them a little time to do that.
Under loan mediation, I have obviously your biggest group, but now does that bucket, are those bank issues and our liens and title things separate from that, or are they also in that category?
No, they're separate from that. Getting a title defect separate from the bank issue.
So the ones that are in foreclosure, when the bank takes it over, they're the ones getting the 107%, right?
The bank becomes a post-flood owner.
Right.
And
Oh, no, that's what I meant. Yes, they're the ones that don't get the 107%.
They become a post-flood owner, and they're only eligible for current market value, which is one of the reasons we're able to negotiate with lenders once we can get a lender's attention. As you can imagine, with some of these large national banks, finding the right person to be able to talk to is sometimes difficult.
Yeah. Here's that right after the flood. Which is a really good visual, Joe. Are any of these duplicated? Like, if a flood victim has several of these problems?
No, these are parcels. A parcel is only going to be in one bucket at a time. It may move through several buckets.
Okay,
It may have several problems and have several stops along the way as it goes through the process.
Where they are in the process at the time. Okay.
Any other questions for Joe as far as update on acquisition? Thank you. The handout is very useful. Pleasantly surprised there aren't more investment units.
A lot have been in that bucket and have been moved out because we've done a lot of negotiating with lien holders and judgment. So there have been a lot that have gone through that process. As I said, sometimes that can be very quick, other times it can take 6 to 9 months to go through that process. So people got into the program, acquisition program early and had those problems. We spent 6, 9, 10 months negotiating with lenders. Now that's done and they've closed, so they're out of it.
And they have closed, and they have moved to another bucket.
Yeah. So that's always an in and out. All these stops are in and out.
What about the properties where you can't locate the owner?
That is going to be a remaining problem. If we can't, if the owner has simply abandoned the property and moved on, and they've moved out of state or something, that's something we struggle with. And so far we've had luck finding I mean, it is just something we continue to work on.
All right, any other questions for Joe? Before we let you go, though, anybody on the committee want to discuss any thoughts on any other pending gaps anybody might have thought about or heard from people on?
I have a long
Maybe Joe
list,
could address.
and if you don't have to be anywhere, I'd love for you to stay to listen. I was hoping CoSource would be here too.
I'm trying to think. What's your view on that? Is that something we want, I mean, do you think, what about, I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, but what about coming up with a list of those? I'm just thinking, is that a subject for another meeting?
Well, I began writing a program so I have a lot of these gaps. I've got 12-page program, and I did this a year ago, and then, of course, by listening to people, I've come up with more gaps that I wrote in here separate instead of, integrating it into the program. There might be a couple on here that I duplicated. I haven't read this for a while.
Is it something you're willing to work on and throw in black and white to the group in a future meeting? It is something that we always just...
The list of gaps?
Yeah.
Sure. I'm not going to come up with my program.
Yeah. But no, some kind of, just a bullet...
I've done enough with staff jobs for 3.5 years.
Maybe do a kind of a bullet point listing. That's something that we come up as a group of things that scream out at us. It's always something that we can forward on.
Do you want me to just cover some of these bullet points that I've come up with since I wrote this?
Yeah, since Joe's here, just want to hit him with a few.
Okay. Okay, SBA, small business, is getting assistance to pay for interest, correct? On the SBA. I don't know anything about small business programs. I'm the expert on the residential. And I think homeowners and possibly landlords, I know homeowners didn't get that, and I'm not sure where the landlords stand on that, because they've been in two different categories jerked around, they're either small business or they're residential and different. So I don't know if the landlords received that assistance to help pay for their interest, but it'd be nice that all the flood victims were treated equally and their interest on the SBA would help. I've got landlord carrying costs, which means the mortgage, property tax, and insurance from the time of the flood, because they lost the ability to pay for their mortgage on the flooded property until the buyout. It's good to know that there's one section of that gap that's from when they started the paperwork for the buyout until the close, right?
It's from when they agreed on purchase price.
Oh, so even shorter than, okay. The city had a down payment assistance, which they took back and replaced it with a lesser program, replacement housing assistance. And there were people that were trying and are trying to sell their house, and they're competing with these other properties that are giving a 25% down payment assistance. So I know somebody in my neighborhood who was trying to sell their house at the time of the flood, and she wasn't eligible for any jump start or loss because of the lien issue. But she got FEMA, and that's all she got, and she's still trying to sell the house. And I think if these developers, and I think even nonprofits, have the opportunity to use that should be allowed that too, because they're competing and having a harder time to sell after they did all the work to rehab. Liens placed on properties post-flood only, not pre-flood liens. I found out from an issue where my lawn got out of hand, and I just happened to go by my flood home and see a tag on my door. And I went down to Public Works and asked them, you know, why wasn't I notified before? I just happened to show up here and see this. Well, they did notify me. They sent me the mail, but they sent it to my flood address. And I asked, why are you sending it to the flood address? Public Works clearly has the new addresses, because we've been getting paperwork from the Public Works Department. You know, when the mayor sent out those letters, that was from Public Works Department. You see it on the letterhead. We have been getting information from the Public Works Department. So the Public Works Department had our replacement home address. And so when I talked to the person who is responsible to send out the notification, like if the lawn's not being mowed or the sidewalk is not being cleaned, they are told to use the assessor site. And flood victims were never told to go to the assessor and change the mailing address on the assessor site. Since we were getting all this mail, you know, from the city to our replacement homes, we just kind of, and as informed as I am of all these issues, I didn't even know to go to the assessor site. My flood address was on there. So I requested to Dave Elgin to provide this information, especially when his department has the information for the new address. That way these notifications are actually getting to the flood victims. Since they're not getting to the flood victims, these liens are being placed on the flood victims' homes. So I'd like to see a program where these post-flood liens that have been issued by the city, because you know, the city wasn't notifying them to be replacement homes, I think those liens need to be released. And for those who already closed on the buyout, I think they should be reimbursed. And that may help with some of the lien issues. We don't know. There were liens on properties that CDBG, you know, since we're an entitled community, we are allowed to get CDBG grants before the flood. It had nothing to do with flood assistance. And if you qualify, income qualify, you are able to use the CDBG grant to improve your home. And I was able to get one of those. And then it goes down each year, 10% over 10 years. That's why they started out with a 10-year lien for the residents. I was trying, and Ann knows this, I was working my tail off to try to get all those pre-flood liens for CDBG for the flood victims to be released. I managed to get mine released, but I don't think it should be a case-by-case basis for the one who is, you know, asking for it. I think that's something that the city should have been helping the flood victims with. That could be falling into some of these liens. Do you understand? I mean, the pre-flood CDBGs that I'm talking about. If those were deducted from the buyout, I think they should go retroactive and pay them back. This could be several $1,000s. I think mine was at, let's see, I started, I think mine was in the 5th year or something, but then it received every 10 years, but only to 50%. And then I already said the rental loss from the time of the flood until they're closed, because during that time they were still responsible for mortgage, taxes, and insurance. sold their house for pennies on the dollar, and a lot of them were trying to move on. They used their FEMA money for down payment assistance. They cashed in their 401ks, CDs, retirement, had to pay taxes on those, and they were able to close in on a replacement home so they didn't have a mortgage, because these people didn't have a mortgage before because of their income. They're retired and so forth. So they put everything they had into a replacement home. Then, along comes this down payment assistance program, and they were not allowed to get down payment assistance. The requirement was that they had to have a fixed mortgage by an amortized fixed loan by and I can't remember what the language is, certified loan person, some people, so if they bought their replacement home in full, then these programs came along, they weren't eligible for the same opportunity. They were basically being punished for moving on. So they weren't eligible for down payment assistance or replacement housing. I'd like to see those people be able to have that same opportunity. And the same goes for those people who bought on contract because maybe they couldn't qualify for an amortized fixed loan with the bank. So they weren't eligible for any down payment assistance. The 1099s that were sent out for the personal possession program, there is every documentation you can think of that is not supposed to be taxed. The only exception is for those flood victims who claimed a loss. And those people generally have tax authorities, and they know if they claim the loss that when they get disaster assistance that they then have to count that as income. That's a very, very small percentage, and they already know to do that. With all the other flood victims, they did not itemize or claim a loss. And issuing those 1099s then forced that disaster assistance, which the IRS is very, very clear on that the disaster assistance is not income. CCIA is trying to use Section 1.6 something from the IRS, stating that if over $600 of income was issued, they have to send 1099s out. That's the key word. It's supposed to be income. And IRS is clear that this is not income. But yet they send the 1099s out, and they're about to do it for the renters, forcing many flood victims to pay taxes on that because it says nothing about disaster assistance. Most of these tax professionals around here don't know how to handle the disaster assistance. When they see a 1099, it is income to them. And since the flood victims were to be told from the beginning, it was on our website, it was on both applications for the homeowners and renters, that this disaster assistance will be counted as taxable income per the IRS. That was a complete lie. And there's all kinds of documentation that says this is not income and it's not taxable. So there were a lot of people that paid taxes on disaster assistance that weren't supposed to. I think those people should get taken care of. And there's been a big problem with, we got a abatement for the first year. But I don't think the property tax, since it's unlivable, should be paid from the time of the flood. And this whole community thinks that we are not paying property taxes at all. And that's not true. We got the abatement for 1 year, and we're having to pay property taxes since then. So we're basically paying property taxes on our flood house and our replacement home, which isn't right. And I think they should all be abated. For those people who had the property tax deducted from their buyout, I think there should be retroactive and give them that assistance. The rest of my gaps are integrated into my program, but I thought those, since I bullet pointed them, came up with a master program that I could go over it easier, faster.
Okay, yeah, if there's something I'll put together, and keep the group, just forward that on, you know, get it on an agenda for an upcoming meeting.
Another thing I know off the top of my head is the utilities. A lot of people were paying utilities up until the buyout, especially heat, because some people know that it would be damaging the house. These aren't homes that they know are going to be demolished. These are homes that are rehabable. So I've been paying heat and electricity and water. Mostly I finally shut it off last year when my pipes froze because somebody shut off the heat. I had another flood in my home. So that's been shut off for a year now. But up until then, water, garbage, heat, electricity have been paid all these years, which is a rehabilitation cost, really. And they don't recognize that as a buyout. That is up to a few $1,000 over several years.
All right, thank you. If there's something else we all have in front of us, black and white, we can address those further down the